Hello and welcome to today's Direct Talk session. On today's session, Ambassador Fiseha Asgedom will be joining us. Ambassador, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with your reflections on why you believe the Ethiopian and Eritrean regimes, as well as their Amhara regional allies, choose the path of carnage and destruction, rejecting the efforts to resolve the conflict through peaceful means. I mean, specifically, what's the invaders' endgame?
Uh, the the invaders have already committed the worst crime known to man, genocide, and they have executed it to the highest level in the 21st century. And as you know, crimes like genocide are not left unpunished.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, those the Tigrayan people and the international community uh, have expressed their views that those who committed genocide will be held accountable. And in the history of genocide, there has never been where a genocidal government has negotiated its way uh, out of this crime with its victims. Both Abiy and Isaias know this. They have committed genocide. At the end of the day, they will be held accountable. And they think, like their predecessors, they can get off the problem. They can completely exterminate the Tigrayan people, then consider what is on the ground. The international community will take what is given, that they can get away with it. Therefore, they have wanted to finish what they started. The international community has allowed them to do that. They think they can get out of this accountability by finishing what they started, like those who were before them. As you know, we are not the only ones that genocide has been committed against us. There were genocide crimes in Yugoslavia, Rwanda, in Iraq against the Kurds, uh, and it's always post-genocide that the international community awakens and says never again. And therefore, those who committed genocide never survived. If they do, it was a matter of time. And therefore, Abiy and Isaias have decided they could exterminate us, and that the world will accept whatever the crimes they deal with it. And that will never happen. We will not allow that to happen. And I think that's why they continue to create this havoc instead of coming to their senses.
What, in your view, explains why this conflict has proven to be so intractable? I mean, what steps can the international community take to break the current impasse?
Well, uh, I don't think there is one single reason why this genocidal war has been intractable. There are some reasons, some are beyond my comprehension as to why. But one reason, maybe a main one, in my view, is the complete deterioration of the EPRDF, so much so it's self-destructed itself, and it could not see uh, what was coming to it. It allowed a daylight imposter and a demagogue to come to the highest office in the country. Therefore, I think mainly it is because the PRDF allowed to be led by such person, the deterioration of its political process, In addition to that, as you know, the current Prime Minister of Ethiopia has sponsors. Uh, he was fully supported by the US Trump administration. They consider him as a reformist, real liberal Democrat, what have you. They even thought that he could change Isaias, bring him aboard and reform Eritrea. They made this decision. The United States is always known for making such blunders. They gave him the Nobel Peace Prize. That was a stamp of approval to do whatever he wants to do in Ethiopia. Another reason is the nature of the Ethiopian state. Since the change of government after the fall of the Derg, for 27 plus years, Ethiopia was a leader in the Horn of Africa. It was responsible for many issues such as international peace and security, fight against international terrorism. It has given leadership to the African continent and it participates in global affairs. And therefore, many in the Western countries have said Ethiopia is too big to fail. This is a syndrome that they continue to act. We all agree Ethiopia is too big to fail. It is a country of 120 plus million people. It has a history in the region, but the tragedy is many in those in the West and what we call the international community uh, take the survival or the support to Abiy as to as if that amounts to the survival of the country. That is the main blunder they have made. As a matter of fact, by supporting Abiy to such an extent, uh, they will be blamed for contributing for a failed state in Ethiopia. Yes, we cannot afford another failed state in the country, in the region. We have Somalia in our hands for many years. We have a failed state in Eritrea and what have you in other places. But the way to go around is not to support Abiy. Once they felt that he was their man, they continue to look the other way, and they are contributing to the dragging of the country down the wrong path. Therefore, they supported Abiy, they mentored him. There is no coherent action against his behavior. As I said earlier, they thought Isaias could be turned to be a reformist. The contrary, Isaias is now training Abiy to be a number one dictator around the Horn. These are some of the reasons that the conflict has been intractable.
Since the start of this latest round of invasion, both regimes have deployed their fleet of foreign supply drones and jets to attack civilians and civilian installations across Tigray, leading to hundreds of civilians being murdered and wounded. With critical civilian facilities also damaged or destroyed, the international community's reaction to these repeated incidents of aerial attacks hasn't gone beyond statements of concerns and calls for all sides to protect civilians. What do you think explains this weak response?
Well, before speaking on the weak response of the international community, I think it is fair to speak of the some of the positive developments that have been taking place in as far as international community is concerned. The the last few weeks and days, there have been some concrete, what I consider positive signals and steps by the members of the international community. Uh, the European Union has adopted a new resolution on October 6th, what I consider as a very strong resolution. So much so, the Addis government is in disarray. It never expected such resolution to come at this time. They have different delegations that they were receiving from the European Union, and they thought that they have the understanding the European Union was going to kind of change its attitude towards Addis. That was the signal they received from different delegations. That the special envoy of the European Union had a very mixed take on it, on her interaction with the Addis authorities in her briefing to the European Union countries. The debacle of the South African peace talks that were supposed to take place. It is timing. Given all this, Addis thought the European Union will never adopt such a resolution at this time. They did. It is a good step forward. The International Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia had its report on the September 19, which I believe is a very good start. I personally believe this is the first step to come out to the conclusion that genocide has been committed in Tigray by this international body. As we say in Tigrinya, it is just one Friday short. Once they have full-fledged investigation, they will come to that conclusion. They have come at this early stage after just a brief work of 2 months. That one of their findings is what we've been saying all along, that both Addis and Asmara governments have used starvation as a weapon of war. And therefore, this was quite a development welcomed by the international community. And also, its mandate was extended for 1 year. Just the other day, 6 countries, Germany, Australia, the Netherlands, UK, the United States, and Denmark, also came out with a joint statement that is more or less endorsing what the government of Tigray has called for in September 11 statement. These are some of the positive statements and positions that we have to take into account. Having said this, the international community is again now in regard to what's happening now in the blanket bombardment of civilians in Tigray. They are consistent. They have allowed genocide to take place, and they are tolerating it. And if they were going to come out with more barrage of concern, we are appalled. I don't think it matters much. This is part and parcel of the international community being indifferent to what's happening to the people of Tigray. They are consistent as far as they are concerned, and therefore, other than, as you said, some of this members of the international community to express themselves, blaming both sides as if the Tigray forces has air power to call for to target civilians. It is appalling. It is disgusting, but that is in the nature of international politics, and we are on our own. We can only get out of this through our struggle.
Has the international community's indifference to persistent violation of the international laws emboldened both regimes to intensify their assaults on Tigray?
Definitely, it goes without saying. They have done it both publicly. If you go back to the start of the war, it was the Trump administration that gave a green light. One can only remember what the then Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said in terms of uh, appeasing Eritrea. He had the audacity to thank the president of Eritrea for showing patience and magnanimity and what have you, when in fact Eritrea was invading and committing genocide in Tigray. They gave Abiy a limited time to finish the war, to finish out all, and that did, to this day, involved both Abiy and Isaias. The other government officials of the United States, such as the former ambassador to Ethiopia and then I think the Assistant Secretary for African Affairs, Ambassador Tibor Nagy, to this day, encouraging this genocidal war uh, and what have you. Countries like Russia and China uh, paralyzing the Security Council from taking any meaningful action. The Secretary General of the United States, to this date, acting and sounding as if he's a member of the Abiy government. He has completely failed his duty as a Secretary General of the United States. He has forsaken the Tigray people for his cheap friendship with Abiy Ahmed. These have all sent signals to these dictators to feel emboldened. History will be registering this when the history of genocide in Tigray is written. The African Union the commissioner has endorsed the war, calling it is law and order. His special envoy, the former president of Nigeria, has called for Eritrea to be at the negotiating table. This is a travesty. This all sends the right signals for these dictators to continue to do what they are doing. Therefore, there is no doubt that the international community has emboldened both Asmara and Addis Ababa.
Speaking of the international law, what's your take on the recent decision by the UN Human Rights Council to extend the mandate of the International Commission's human rights experts on Ethiopia?
Well, let me go back a little bit before the establishment of this International Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia. We have been calling for an impartial, independent investigation in the crimes committed in Tigray. The government of Addis saw this coming, and with the support of the United Nations, especially the Secretary General and the then Commissioner of the Human Rights Council, Michelle Bachelet, they thought they could deter, they could preempt the establishment of such international investigative organization. So they come out with this idea of joint investigation team, where the United Nations Human Rights Council and the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission jointly are supposed to investigate the crimes committed in Tigray. This we consider was enabling these genociders to continue to do what they were doing. Daniel Bakala and company were not expected to come out with an investigation that could implicate their boss. That was a foregone conclusion. Nevertheless, as I said earlier, the Secretary General and the Human Rights Commissioner, who was, by the way, unlike all other specialized agencies, is appointed by the Secretary General, conspired to stop the international community from coming out with an international investigative body. It was not easy, but the Human Rights Council established the International Commission of Human Rights experts on Ethiopia, despite the objection of the Ethiopian government and its Human Rights Commission. So this has to be taken in context when we talk about the extension of the mandate and what have you. That is the first step, kind of breakthrough of what is coming. Once that was established, the Ethiopian government did everything for this commission not to be established. They did everything for it not to present its report. Once it was established, then Addis started playing games. They have discussions, they invited them, but the commission stood its ground. And therefore, at the end, they will not allow the commission to do its work. They will not allow access to Tigray. And yet, on its initial report of September 19 that I mentioned earlier, with limited material in hand, it came with a report, and the Addis Ababa government wouldn't accept it. It did its best to stop from the mandate, from extending the mandate, and therefore we have now the extension of the mandate of the commission for 1 year, and I have no doubt that at the conclusion of their term, they will unequivocally conclude that genocide has been committed in Tigray. We know the Ethiopian government will do everything for this not to happen, but it is beyond its control. Therefore, the extension to us is a huge step in as far as investigating genocide is concerned.
Why did all African nations represented on this council vote no on the resolution to extend the Commission's mandate?
Well, not only voting no, the African Union have looked the other way. Genocide is being committed against fellow Africans. Why? I think it has to do with the value system that we Africans have. The African Union and its commissioner have taken a lead in blessing this genocide. The old idea that the one who think it goes like the one who lives in a glass house shouldn't be first one to throw a stone or what have you. Every African country, especially these 13 countries that are a member of the Commission, feel one of these days they could also be accountable for human rights issues, what we call scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. It is unfortunate. They really are there not to uphold human rights issues, but to support each other and to fend off any accusations that may come in their individual country. Also, in the case of Ethiopia, I think one of the diplomats told me that the African countries, their embassies in Addis, many of them have errors that rents are not paid, utilities are not settled, and therefore their diplomatic privileges could be tampered with. They do not want to take any such privilege just to uphold the human rights of the Tigrayans. I heard that there was a discussion on what kind of punitive steps they can take against this particular country that abstained instead of saying no. And given the history of the government in Addis, its speciality in blackmail, they may be susceptible to it. In any event, truly speaking, these African countries really don't care about human rights issues. Mm, I'm not saying this because it only happens to it happened to us, but they have shown it from time to time. They really don't care. They one thing that they talk about is how to support each other as governments. That's what I said in their value system. They countries like Eritrea and others are in Somalia are members of the Human Rights Council. You don't think these countries do care about human rights issues in Tigray. They don't even care about their own citizens' human rights. Therefore, we are not proud of what Africans are doing. When I speak to Western diplomats and we complain about their lack of action, reaction to what's happening, then they say, look what the Africans have. They could not even support you when we are presenting a draft resolution on the part of on our part. Therefore, it is a shame, but that is how African politics is. Unfortunate.
The humanitarian situation in Tigray is unimaginably catastrophic, with tens of thousands having already perished from hunger and diseases. Even before the latest round of invasion, only limited aid had been trickling into Tigray. But since the latest round of invasion, no humanitarian aid had been allowed into Tigray, either over land or through air. Why have the UN and the broader international community failed to use every tool in their disposal to get the invaders to comply with the basic principles of the international humanitarian law?
Well, as far as the humanitarian situation is concerned, to be fair to the Western countries, including the United States, with all the shortcomings and challenges, they really have tried to deliver humanitarian assistance to our people. It could have been much more worse if they haven't tried that much. Our own government, our own country has condemned us to starvation as a weapon of war. And within that context, they have tried. In terms of taking other actions when it is completely discontinued now, it is just part of the genocidal war that they have ignored. Uh, they have the reports in their hands, what we just discussed earlier. The International Commission human rights experts have concluded that both Addis and Asmara are using starvation as a weapon of war, but the international community has failed to react. Who is the international community per se? Mainly it is the European Union, the African Union, the United Nations, and of course the United States of America. The European Union has, to this day, tried better than the rest to pressure the Addis government to allow humanitarian access to Tigray, but they cannot go beyond that. They haven't done any action. The resolution that I mentioned earlier talks about all kind of political action against the Addis Ababa government if they don't comply. But I don't think it makes a whole lot of difference so long as the UN Security Council it does not act. And the UN Security Council cannot act this time because of China and Russia with their veto power, stopping from any action against genocide in Tigray. The Secretary General being a conduit of this situation, always in support of the Al Shabaab government. And of course, as far as I'm concerned, the continuation of the U.S. Policy towards Addis Ababa. Uh, the Trump administration supported Abiy all the way through. The Biden administration has no different policy. Of course, uh, the genocide situation happened their watch during their term, and therefore they reacted to the different level in terms of human rights issues and the humanitarian, but the policy hasn't changed, meaning they believe they have to be on the side of Ali at any cost. That is the reality. That's what we have to understand. They think that no matter what, unless it is on Ali's terms, that the people may starve, the people may perish, we are on our own. So the international community is not doing as much as it should do in terms of humanitarian access. It cannot do enough. It hasn't done enough pressure for cessation of hostilities to be agreed upon. Why? Because they believe that the survival of Ari is a priority to them than the perishing of millions of people in Tigray. Uh, is it a wrong policy? Yes. Are they going to be, uh, you know, convinced of this short term? I don't think so. Until we free ourselves from these two monsters that want to exterminate us. Therefore, the humanitarian situation on the ground is appalling. They know it. They know more details than you and I know in all aspects of the world. The United States government, for example, have like 7 months ago uh, uh, completed study if the war in Tigray, the crimes in Tigray has been genocidal or not. Whatever the conclusion is, it is there in the hands of the Secretary of State. That is what the State Department reported to the US government, to the US House of Representatives. And I believe they know more than we do. They have more their file than we know of. Therefore, they are looking the other way. There has been in the history of genocide uh, since day one, following the Second World War, after Hitler's Holocaust and what have you. Since genocide has been coined by Raphael Lincoln, the United States have a very terrible track record in terms of its action and reaction to genocides. It only acknowledges mistakes after genocide has been done in all aspects. Therefore, this is not new. Unfortunately, history is repeating itself. Therefore, this so-called international community has forsaken us. It is looking the other way. It is allowing Abiy and Isaias to finish us, but that's not going to happen. Again, we will prevail, and they will come back and say, we should have done this and we should have done that. That's what they said in Rwanda. That's what they said in Yugoslavia. It took them 100 years on the genocide against Armenians by the Turks. Therefore, this not action on humanitarian situation is just part and parcel of the genocide that is taking place, and the international community is looking the other way.
Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Well, that wraps up this edition of our Direct Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in.